This is Project Mercury, a launch vehicle taking one pilot into orbit. This is from something called Reentry and Orbital Simulator. Pre-flight checks. Main batteries on number 1, 2, and 3. Standby batteries, number 1 and number 2. ISOL battery. All left panel fuses in the number 1 position. Squib switch is off. Auto retro jet switch, arm. ASCS switch, norm. RSCS switch, auto. Gyro switch, gyro norm. Fuel handle, the manual fuel handle, the roll fuel handle, and the yaw fuel handle, as well as the pitch fuel handle, are all needing to be pushed in. The retro delay switch set to instant. Photo light switch on, and the cabin light switch set to both. TLM low frequency switch on. Rescue switch to auto. Launch control switch off. Jettison tower ring in, as well as the separation capsule ring in. Retro attitude switch should be set to auto, and the fire retro switch and the jettison retro switch to have the guard placed over them. The snorkel ring, the main ring, and the reserve ring are in. The landing bag switch is set to auto. The control fuel is to be checked as well, with the auto fuel and manual fuel both at 100%. Next, we'll check some of our instruments. The rate of descent should read 0 feet per second. The altimeter we will check to show our elevation. The satellite clock also has to be checked, the time of day that it is, as well as the time from launch should read 0. Also, time to retrograde clock. Our attitude rate indicated is checked. The rate indicators and the attitude indicators must be checked. The rate indicators must be centered, and the attitude indicator is checked. The time 0 cover is removed. Cabin pressure is checked. Cabin air temperature is checked. Suit environment indicator is checked. The oxygen quantity, both the primary and the secondary, should be at 100%. Suit fan switch is set to norm, as well as the cabin fan switch set to norm. DC volts knob is set to main, and the ASCS AC bus to norm. Standby battery switch on. ISOL battery switch standby. Inlet valve power switch norm. Audio bus switch to norm. AC voltmeter 150 volts. VOX PWE switch to off. The UHF DF switch to norm. UHF select switch to high power. The transmit switch is set to off. Beacon switch ground. All audio tone switches are on. Warning light switches are set to bright. The last few items here on this list are all the switch fuses in the number 1 position. The emergency O2 switch is normal. Suit temperature selector is to mark, and the cabin temperature selector is to mark, as well as the inverter temp selector to mark. The last item we have is to set the maneuver on. This spins up the gyros, which we need a good 5 minutes. to get it spinning up fast enough to be ready for launch. Here, next we have our abbreviated pre-flight checklist. This is T 20 minutes to countdown. All left panel fuses are in the number 1 position. Our squib switch is armed. Our auto retro jettison switch is armed. Our ASCS switch is normal. Our RSCS switch is auto. Our retro delay switch is normal. Rescue switch, auto. Retro attitude switch, auto. Landing bag switch, auto. The fuel is checked, the auto fuel and the manual fuel. Cabin pressure indicator is noted, as well as the cabin temperature indicator, the suit temperature indicator, the suit pressure indicator, the amount of primary oxygen, as well as secondary oxygen. The suit fan switch must be set to normal. The cabin fan switch set to normal. The DC volts knob is main. Ammeter switch set to normal. The ASCS AC bus switch is normal. Standby battery switch is on. The ISOL battery switch is on standby. Inlet valve power switch, normal. Audio bus switch, normal. Fans AC bus switch, normal. The VOX power switch is set to off. The UHF DF switch is normal. The UHF select switch is set to high power. Transmit switch, off. Beacon switch, continuous. All main panel switches in the number 1 position. Emergency O2 handle is normal. Our next checklist is our full internal power checklist. It has just a couple items here and is set T minutes to take off. ISOL battery switch is normal and standby battery switch is off. Here we'll monitor the capsule battery voltage current while external power is disconnected, which you must request to be removed of external power. The next check is final check before launch, T minus 5. Launch control switch is ready. Suit temperature is set to mark. Cabin temperature is to mark. Our inverter temperature is to mark. We are transmitting on UHF. And we perform a radio check on UHF. And ensure the time 0 cover is removed. We'll set our DC volts knob to 1. Our squib switch arm. Auto retro jettison switch arm. Our next checklist is during our ascent. So we have takeoff and ascent. We monitor abort light, monitor isolated battery voltage, monitor cabin pressure. It will go from 15 to 5.5. Auto retro jettison switch is off after the tower is jettisoned. Retro jet fuse is off after the tower jettison as well. Monitor the DC voltage. Monitor the DC ammeter. Monitor the AC voltage. Our next checklist is in orbit. DC volts knob is main. Landing bag switch off. Retro delay switch is set to normal. Retro manual fuse off. Retro tower, separation, cap, tail lights are out 5 minutes after separation of the capsule.